Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm so glad that you've joined us this morning. We've got a lot of viewer comments to kick off the broadcast. We also have a lot of updates from last week and just breaking news in general. Let's go to viewer comments. Good morning. Well, good morning. Today is Sunday. It's 3 p.m. I'm listening to Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah. He is arguing for the Save America Act with indisputable logic. The Democrats don't even have a shred of logic in their counter arguments. Given the senator's logic and the fact that there could be hundreds of thousands illegal aliens that might be voting in our elections, and the mainly blue states are refusing to adhere to federal law regarding who is eligible to vote, I have to wonder if states such as New York and California can be excluded from being able to vote in federal elections. Is this possible? Is it possible to invalidate a state's vote in federal elections as a result of questionable voter registration practices? I look forward to your response. That's a good question. I don't think so, but maybe that's an avenue that President Trump could explore to get the SAVE Act through. I don't know. That's a fair question. Also, please ask Nick Langworthy about the responsibility of states to adhere to the Constitution of the United States. Thank you in advance. Note that I've also written to the president about this, but can only hope that he will get to read it. Next time I have Congressman Langworthy on the program, I will ask him that question. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Good morning. This morning on ABC News, it was reported concerning the massive flooding in Hawaii. However, not a single word about the fact that FEMA has no funding to help due to the Democrats' shutdown. Imagine that. Yes, they are, even with the TSA, they begrudgingly have to report that it's because of the shutdown that you have to wait, 4 hours in some instances to board. So you raise a good point. They know that this is not a winning strategy, and they've tried to do everything they can to cover it up. They still sometimes even try to blame Republicans for it. Mark writes in and says good morning as well. And he says, I see Elon Musk has offered to pay TSA's salary. Yes, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Now I think that's a really decent thing. But Schumer doesn't like it because they will lose their hold over the Republicans. And also Trump says he is sending ICE to help TSA, and the Democrats are furious about that also. Never mind that people are without paychecks. Just shows you how much the Democrats don't care about us. Yes, the TSA working for no pay. Yes, they will get back pay when the government opens back up, but there doesn't seem to be any sign of that happening soon. Yesterday, or early this morning, I should say, an Air Canada flight arriving at LaGuardia Airport crashed into a rescue truck, leaving 2 pilots dead and 2 Port Authority cops seriously injured, according to sources. Emergency vehicles swarmed runway 4 at the Queen's Airport after a regional jet en route from Montreal struck a rescue truck, responding to a separate incident just before 11:40 p.m. Images showed the front of the commuter plane smashed and tilting in the air. Sources told the Post that the pilot and co-pilot aboard the crashed jet were killed. The injured cops, who work on the Port Authority Police Department's Aircraft Rescue Firefighter Unit, which is staffed by police to respond to aircraft emergencies, suffered broken bones and are expected to survive. According to the sources, a female flight attendant was ejected through the front of the aircraft while in her seat during the crash and has survived. Port Authority cops helped rescue her, and she has been brought to the hospital. There were 72 passengers and 4 crew members on the plane, according to Jazz Aviation, which operated the Air Canada Express flight. Their conditions are being evaluated. Sources said the plane was carrying a group of Orthodox Jews from the New York area. The Air Canada flight was rolling down the runway when it struck the truck as it crossed the runway, according to Flight Radar 24. So that's some breaking news happening late last night. Now, Friday, we told you that Chuck Norris had a medical emergency. As you know by now, Chuck Norris has passed away at the age of 86. Known for the hit series Walker, Texas Ranger, and later as a popular internet meme, passed away on Thursday, according to his family. Quote, it is with heavy hearts that our family shares the sudden passing of our beloved Chuck Norris yesterday morning. While we would like to keep the circumstances private, please know that he was surrounded by his family and was at peace. To the world, he was a martial artist, actor, and symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother, and the heart of our family. He lived his life with faith, purpose, and an unwavering commitment to the people he loved. Now we know many of his movies, The Way of the Dragon, Lone Wolf McQuade, Missing in Action, Code of Silence, The Delta Force. He was also a vocal advocate for conservative political causes, Republican candidates, and his own Christian beliefs. As a matter of fact, Trump weighed in on it. President Trump reacted to the news of Chuck Norris's death, saying that Norris was tough and a great man. He was a tough cookie and a great supporter. He was a great guy. He was a really good, tough cookie. You didn't want to fight him, I can tell you that. He was a tough, great guy. He was a great supporter. Tell his family, highest respect, great man. And as we mentioned, his family released that statement. Now, the death of Norris comes after TMZ reported Thursday that Norris was hospitalized in Hawaii. Norris, who's known for his role in the television show Walker, Texas Ranger, also appeared in films such as The Octagon, An Eye for an Eye, and Silent Rage. His last appearance in a feature film was in The Expendables 2. As his family statement said, he lived his life with faith, purpose, and unwavering commitment to the people he loved. Through his work, discipline, and kindness, he inspired millions around the world and left a lasting impact on so many lives. Now, also, over the weekend, it was reported that former Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, Director Robert Mueller, who also served as the special counsel for the Russiagate hoax investigation, died at 81, according to multiple reports. Mueller's family issued a statement in which they shared that Mueller had passed away Friday evening. Mueller, who became the director of the FBI in September of 2001, served under presidents of both political parties. While at the FBI, Mueller set about almost immediately overhauling the Bureau's mission to meet the law enforcement needs of the 21st century. At the FBI, Mueller set about, as I just mentioned, beginning his 12-year tenure just 1 week before the September 11th attacks and serving across presidents of both political parties. He was nominated by Republican President George W. Bush. Two people familiar with the matter told MS Now that Mueller had died on Friday. The people told the outlet that the cause of death was not immediately known. But if you recall, back in 2025, Mueller's family issued a statement to the New York Times that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the summer of 2021. Mueller was also known for his role as special counsel into the investigation regarding Russia allegedly interfering in the 2016 presidential election. In a post on Truth Social, Trump responded to the news of Mueller's death, stating that he was glad he's dead. Robert Mueller just died. Good, I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. Wow. Now, the media, Brian Stetler at CNN, said that Trump said he was glad Robert Mueller died. Fox News never mentioned his comment on TV. Robert Mueller just died, Trump posted on Truth Social shortly after the news of his death became public. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. Since then, Fox News has mentioned Mueller's death at least 6 times on air without ever quoting Trump's celebration or all the outrage the post provoked, according to a TV transcript database search. This is what CNN's reporting on. Interesting. Most of Fox's mentions of Mueller's death were short news updates, not full-fledged discussions. But that, too, was a curious choice for a network whose biggest star spent years villainizing Mueller for leading the Russia probe during Trump's first term. One of the only extended conversations about Mueller was on Trey Gowdy's Sunday evening show, in which he and Representative Jim Jordan discussed the political origins of the Russian collusion hoax. Trump's reaction did not come up. Fox's omission was a window into how the pro-Trump network selectively amplifies or sidesteps his rhetoric depending on the moment. Can you imagine that CNN has the audacity to criticize what they deem as bias in the media? Fox's omission was a window into how the pro-Trump network selectively amplifies or sidesteps his rhetoric depending on the moment. When his choice about Mueller gained attention on social media, Trump critics surmised that Fox's producers were implicitly admitting the president's comments were appalling by choosing to ignore it altogether. Fox was certainly aware of the controversy since his website featured a story about Mueller's death that quoted Trump at the very top. But on TV, I'm glad he's dead was not deemed newsworthy at all. Instead of quoting the current president, who did not express any condolences, they quoted former President George W. Bush, who nominated Mueller to be FBI director, praising Mueller's service to the country. A Fox News spokesperson did not respond to a request for comment Sunday night about the coverage choices. On other networks, Trump's decision to celebrate Mueller's death sparked panel discussions and vocal criticism. Trump's comments, quote, should be shocking for anyone to say, let alone a president. but it's not. Trump's refusal to show any grace to perceived foes, even after death, is a feature, not a bug. Not a surprise, but that doesn't make it okay, said CNN anchor Dana Bash. One of Fox's longest-serving analysts, former anchorman Brit Hume, was among those who chose to speak up about it, saying this is the kind of stuff Trump does that makes people not oppose him but hate him. There was no need to say anything. Wow. That was Brit Hume's. This is far from the first time Fox News has turned a blind eye to particularly difficult to defend conduct by Trump. Last December, when another one of Trump's political foes, Rob Reiner, was brutally murdered, Trump made disparaging remarks about the star director, calling him deranged and almost celebrating his death. Fox hosts went out of their way to avoid directly mentioning Trump's comments. And months before that, the network also all but ignored a scoop by the Wall Street Journal, its corporate sibling, about a scandalous birthday note to Jeffrey Epstein bearing Trump's name. There you go. All right, that's what CNN is reporting on. We got some other breaking stories. We're just getting warmed up on this Monday morning edition of Frankly Speaking. It is 6:11. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We will be right back.
You don't have time to go to the gym? The health club is not an option? Come to Hesselson today and see why swim spas and fitness systems can fit into anyone's yard and budget. 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot, 18-foot dual temperature hot tub and swim spas are all on display in Hesselson's indoor and outdoor showroom. Try before you buy. 0% interest-free financing options are available on every Hesselson swim spa. Swim and exercise year-round and start making every day better. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Google reviews rank Ferrario Jeep the highest customer experience Jeep dealer in our area. Returning Stellantis lessee, lease a new Grand Cherokee Laredo X, just $329 per month. $19.99 due at signing, only $329 a month, and it's yours. Check out all your Jeep favorites during our declaration of deals.
If you don't see me, I can't save you any money.
Visit Ferrario Jeep in Elmira now during our declaration of deals event.
Insurance companies don't make money by paying claims. They make money by denying them. They hire doctors to say you're not that hurt. They bring in lawyers to chip away at your case. They stall, they argue, they cut corners, because every dollar they save is another dollar of profit. At WYDC Injury Law, we know their tactics, and we fight back with facts and evidence. If you've been injured in New York or Pennsylvania, call 607-500-HURT. Don't let the insurance companies control your story.
Happy Monday, everyone. It's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but it looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Ken writes in, Frank, last week you mentioned how the Democrats worked to obstruct the Trump administration. Below were my thoughts. Of course, the Democrats will do every dastardly thing that they can think of to damage Trump and stop anything he is trying to accomplish. That has been their mantra ever since he got elected to his first term and will continue long after he is no longer the sitting president. Their plan has been and will continue to be to show the public that they can do to a president that has the audacity to go against the Democrats' agenda. They want it clearly known that if any other Republican wants to emulate Trump, they will and can disrupt their administration and personal life like they have Trump's administration and life. Their ultimate hope is to scare everyone else away from obstructing their long-term agenda like Trump has. Thank you, Ken. I do appreciate that. Hey, just quickly, breaking story. It looks like Syracuse basketball, the Syracuse Orange, finalized a deal to hire Jerry McNamara as the next head coach. For all of our Syracuse fans out there, Syracuse is working to finalize an agreement to make Jerry McNamara the next head coach of the college basketball program. Syracuse athletic director Brian Blair spoke to McNamara multiple times over the last week, according to reports. A source with knowledge of the talks between SU officials and McNamara told Syracuse.com the deal isn't done yet, but thought it could be today or tomorrow. McNamara, who played at Syracuse from 2002 to 2006 and started as a freshman on the school's 2003 NCAA championship team, would take over at Syracuse after spending the last 2 years head coach at Siena. This season, McNamara guided Siena to the school's first NCAA tournament berth since 2010. On Thursday, the Saints, seeded 16th in the NCAA's East Regional, threw a scare into top-seeded Duke before falling 71-65. McNamara would become just the 9th coach in Syracuse basketball history, which started in 1900. Wow, that's amazing. He would be tasked with restoring Syracuse's basketball program to its past glory. Recent years have not been kind to the Orange. Syracuse has missed out on the NCAA tournament for 5 straight years, the last 3 of which were under former head coach Adrian Autry. Syracuse fired Autry after the Orange went 15-17 this past season. It was the second straight losing season for Syracuse. McNamara was an assistant to Jim Boeheim from 2011 through 2023 when the Hall of Fame coach retired. McNamara then served as Autry's top assistant for 1 year before taking the head coach job at Siena. Ooh, so your thoughts on that to all of our Syracuse basketball fans? All right. So Trump is deploying ICE to the airports today to ease crowded TSA lines as New York City travelers face scrutiny or face security line, we'll say, heck. Trump wrote, on Monday, ICE will be going to airports to help our wonderful TSA agents who have stayed on the job despite the fact that the radical left Democrats, who are only focused on protecting hardline criminals who have entered our country illegally, are endangering the USA by holding back the money that was long ago agreed to, with signed and sealed contracts and all. The president predicted his decision to send the federal immigration agents to airports nationwide would be met with criticism from the left. Quote, but watch, no matter how great a job ICE does, the lunatics leading the incompetent Democrats will be highly critical of their work. They will do a fantastic job, all quotes. Border czar Tom Homan will be in charge of the operation, according to the president. Homan said during an interview on CNN's State of the Union that he doesn't envision ICE agents doing the job of TSA screeners, but rather handling other aspects of airport security. Saying, quote, I don't see an ICE agent looking at an x-ray machine because you're not trained in that. But there are certain parts of security that TSA is going to do that we can move them off those jobs and put them in the specialized jobs to help move those lines. We'll put together a plan today and we'll execute tomorrow. The border czar indicated discussions are ongoing about how many ICE agents will be deployed to the airport. We're going to do what we can to help TSA move people through the line, Homan said. Travelers have been facing security line heck this past weekend, with wait times on Sunday hitting nearly 3 hours at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, 2 hours at Houston's George Bush International Airport, and more than an hour at JFK in New York. Even before dawn, the TSA pre-check line at JFK appeared to be at a standstill and stretched longer than the regular security checkpoint line. Nearly 2-hour-long lines awaited frustrated flyers attempting to reach their gates at New York's LaGuardia Airport Sunday morning. And we don't have to go through each individual airport. Widespread TSA absenteeism amid a partial government shutdown prompted Trump to start mobilizing ICE agents for use at airports on Saturday, as he called on Democrats to end the stonewalling that has cut off funding and paychecks for TSA screeners. Roughly 50,000 TSA agents have been working without pay amid the shutdown, which is entering its 36th day. Thousands of others have called in sick since February 14th, and more than 400 have quit their jobs altogether. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on ABC's This Week said, I think you're going to see more TSA agents as we come to Thursday, Friday, Saturday of next week. They're going to quit or they're not going to show up. So I do think it's going to get much worse. ICE, unlike TSA, was funded through last summer's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries slammed the plan, saying the last thing the American people need are untrained ICE agents at airports all across the country, potentially to brutalize or in some instances kill them. What? It's unfortunate Republicans have decided they would rather force TSA agents to work without pay, inconvenience millions of Americans all across the country, and now potentially expose them to untrained ICE agents and create chaos at airports throughout the land, rather than get ICE agents under control. That was Jeffries' argument. Democrats have demanded that the Department of Homeland Security implement several immigration enforcement reforms as a condition for federal funding. The White House last week signaled it would support expanding the use of body-worn cameras for ICE agents, limiting immigration enforcement operations around certain locations like schools and hospitals, increasing oversight of ICE detention facilities, and require officers to wear ID badges. Democrats, however, appear to be holding out for more, including a ban on agents wearing masks and face coverings and requiring ICE to obtain judicial warrants before entering private property. Now, as Mark had mentioned, Elon Musk made a bold move saying, I would like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during the funding impasse that is negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans at airports throughout the country. Musk tweeting that out on Saturday. Musk's offer comes as a partial government shutdown passes 1 month, with lawmakers unable to reach a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the TSA. The DHS shutdown has left TSA agents working without pay, triggering staffing shortages and long airport lines nationwide, while raising concerns about the ability to prevent attacks. Republicans have pushed to fund DHS, while Democrats have sought standalone funding for agencies like TSA that would exclude immigration operations. TSA officers are considered essential employees and are required to report to work even during a shutdown, though pay can be delayed. Musk's offer appeared aimed at easing the strain at airport lines that are growing and staffing pressures that are building, as we talked about those delays. Footage, well, we don't have to go through each individual one. It comes as top TSA union leaders warned Thursday that airport security risks linked to the shutdown are set to get worse, given that TSA has been under a hiring freeze since last year. It remains unclear how Musk's proposed arrangement would work or whether it would be legally possible for a private individual to fund federal workers. So again, Elon Musk tweeting out on Saturday, I would like to offer to pay the salaries of TSA personnel during the funding impasse that is negatively affecting the lives of so many Americans at airports throughout the country. We've got a few other things on the TSA. We've got a lot to cover, and we are moving quickly this morning, so stay with us. We will be right back after this.
New York State is putting nearly $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. Lee Com Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
Crispy hot hash browns, sweet savory McGriddles, refreshingly cool iced coffee. Oh, don't mind me, just doing my morning affirmations. Crispy hot hash browns, sweet savory McGriddles.
Mix and match a sausage McMuffin with egg McMuffin, or sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddles. Get any two for just $5 and pair it with $1.99 any size iced coffee.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
It's month with the Ford crew.
Truck month only happens once a year.
So it's gotta be big.
Like available Pro Power on board big.
Protect it with the Ford Security Package big. Biggest deals of the year big.
There's only one Ford Truck Month.
Deal's so good, we need a bigger door big.
Oh yeah.
Right now, get a Ford F-150 with 0% financing, plus 1,000 truck month cash, or lease one for just $299 a month. Only at your local Ford stores.
There have always been a few, ready to fight and win. Since 1775, these few have been Marines, and they come from across this land to defend the future of our nation. This year, our Corps celebrates 250 years, and Marines are proud to serve this country, each other, and all that is still to come for America.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. At CNN, they say there are about 61,000 TSA employees currently caught in the middle as Congress remains locked in a stalemate over funding the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees TSA. Considered essential workers, they must remain on the job at the nation's more than 430 commercial airports during the shutdown, even though they won't get paid until the lapse ends. President Trump said Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents will head to the airports on Monday to help alleviate the strain on TSA workers if lawmakers don't reach an agreement to fund DHS. Many passengers don't really know who pays TSA officers, whether it's the federal government, airports, or airlines. According to focus groups done by the U.S. Travel Association, TSA's budget is funded in part by a fee you pay when booking your plane ticket. That passenger fee, also known as the September 11th security fee, was established by Congress in the aftermath of the terror attack of September 11, 2001. It is currently $5.60 per one-way trip and capped at $11.20 per round trip. The fee is collected by the airline you book with, and it's itemized with taxes and carrier-imposed fees on your receipt. The airlines then pass along the fee revenue to the TSA. The idea for the aviation security fee, the 9/11 fee, was that it would cover most, if not all, of the pay benefits and all of the other things associated with the TSA budget, said former TSA Administrator John Pistole. It was intended to have the users of the service, that being passengers, pay for those services rather than just a freebie from the government. The fee is key to covering the cost of air travel passenger security, including benefits and salaries for federal screeners, along with programs like the Federal Air Marshals Service. Of the $4 billion plus collected from a passenger security fees each year, nearly all the revenue is deposited into the Treasury Department's general fund. Only $250 million can be used directly by TSA to spend on a limited number of security costs. And in 2013, the Bipartisan Budget Act directed that a portion of the security fee revenue be diverted to lower the federal budget deficit rather than fund TSA operations. The annual amount used for deficit reduction is typically about a third of the fees collected from passengers. In the 2023 fiscal year, for example, the total amount of security fees collected hit $4.6 billion, of which approximately $1.6 billion were diverted. So every time you buy a ticket and you walk through the TSA line, Congress is taking a third of the money, $1 billion a year, and putting it towards something that has nothing to do with aviation security, said Eric Hansen, Senior Vice President, Head of Government Relations for the U.S. Travel Association. In the end, TSA operations are funded annually from approximately two-thirds of the security fees collected. That amount is not enough to cover TSA's entire budget, so Congress appropriates additional money for the federal funds as necessary. So why can't the majority of the passenger security fees still be collected during the shutdown, be used to pay TSA workers? Because the fee revenue is appropriated by Congress, and most of it is not considered mandatory spending. TSA does not have control of the money. Its budget falls under DHS and is considered discretionary spending that must be appropriated annually through government funding bills, which provide federal agencies with money to spend on their programs. DHS's funding has been on hold, which led to the partial government shutdown that began over a month ago. So when there's a lapse in funding, transportation security officers don't get paid, said Hansen. Elsewhere in the federal government, fees like the federal gas tax do not go through an appropriations process, yada, 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 yada. So the New York Post editorial board says they wanted ICE out. Now they'll have to pass through ICE on the way out of town. President Donald Trump is 100% right to use Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers to supplement TSA agents at airports. Trump announced a move after Democrats last week again refused to fund the Department of Homeland Security, and as TSA lines at major airports began snaking all the way into baggage claim and out the door. The Democrats hope to use the suffering of American travelers to force Republicans to cave to their demand to kneecap ICE enforcement. But the president played what you could call a Trump card. One irony is the shutdown doesn't affect ICE. It's funded through 2029, thanks to last year's One Big Beautiful Bill, which passed on a simple majority through the reconciliation process. So ICE officers are being paid, but not TSA agents. A worse irony is that Democrats' posturing over ICE translates to the shocking dereliction of duty of refusing to fund DHS while the country is at war. With constant terror threats and several actual recent attacks. Adding a layer of this, the Democrats claim it's Trump who is being unreasonable by not bowing to their anti-ICE agenda. ICE does necessary work. You can't have real border enforcement if you give a pass to anyone who slips by Border Patrol or who willingly submits to being detained so they can receive a court summons and then disappear. not to mention the migrants who stay illegally after their visa expires. It's also no accident that crime has plummeted around the nation over the past year as ICE has been allowed to catch and deport thousands of foreign gangsters. Together with the National Guard, this has made some of America's most dangerous cities like Washington, D.C. much safer. In yet another irony, left-wing activists have set up illegal checkpoints in various cities, checking drivers' IDs in the name of keeping ICE out. In other words, they've decided interior border enforcement has a use after all. Border czar Tom Homan says ICE agents won't be involved in security screening or examining x-ray machines. They'll take on other jobs to make up for the TSA staff shortages. As hundreds of agents have quit since Democrats forced the latest shutdown and countless more call in sick. And therein lies another danger for Democrats. Travelers who encounter ICE agents at the airport might realize they're not remotely the monsters painted in media propaganda. There are fellow Americans, hardworking, courteous neighbors who devote their lives to the cause of public safety. Of course, using ICE at airports is just a temporary measure. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer should end this shutdown and pay the people who protect our nation's airports. How much more suffering will Democrats impose on the general public merely so they can appease the most rabid radicals in their base? They do not mind the suffering of those at the airport. We're going to talk a little bit here about Iran. I do have a Chuck Schumer update. They're again calling for his ouster in his own party. Not very popular. We're going to talk about him. We also have a couple of New York State updates that we'd like to get to if we have the opportunity. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. One last thing on ICE and other, I guess, far left protests. Tax resistance is gaining attention amid ICE protests. The Iran war and IRS penalties could follow. Chicago attorney Michael Cohen owes more than $8,000 in federal income taxes, but has intentionally left that balance unpaid. I'm not paying my federal income tax this year, Cohen said. The 31-year-old community organizer filed her federal tax returns, which shows a balance due of $8,830, according to a tax document received by CNBC. But Cohen said she deliberately chose to withhold payment of that bill as a protest against immigration detention, including ICE facilities and U.S. strikes on Iran, launched without congressional approval. This coming from NBC. While voicing resistance to taxes is legal, refusing to pay taxes owed can violate federal law and lead to serious penalties. Josh Youngblood, owner of the Youngblood Group, a Dallas-based tax firm, said it's completely okay to be unhappy and be dissatisfied with our government, but not paying taxes or engaging in tax fraud or evasion is not the answer. In addition to penalties and interest that start accruing immediately on their past due. That got cut off. Internal Revenue Service, in cases involving tax resistance, routinely dismissing these claims as frivolous and in some instances imposing additional penalties. Cohen said CNBC that she is fully aware of the potential risks and that speaking openly about the decision could attract additional scrutiny from federal authorities. Her protest is directed at federal spending priorities, not taxation itself. She paid about $3,000 in Illinois state taxes, according to tax documents received by CNBC, and said she sees value in how those dollars support state and local services. She said her decision is personal and not something she's encouraging others to do, but hopes it pushes people to reflect on whether their actions match their beliefs. Cohen's protest follows a long tradition of so-called war tax resistance, in which people withhold some or all of their federal taxes to oppose government policies. That appears to be happening again, according to the National War Tax Resistance Coordinating Committee, an educational nonprofit founded in the early 80s by activists connected to the anti-Vietnam War movement in the 80s. The group's website has averaged about 40,000 unique visitors a year until the war in Gaza began in 2023. And now they have 110,000, in January of 26 alone. I don't think anybody's making the decision to practice war tax resistance based on one single action. Instead, major political events can become the final straw that prompts some people to explore the tactic. Rice said the organization does not encourage people to refuse to pay taxes, but instead provides information about how the practice works and its legal risks. All right. So people not paying their taxes in protest of the war in Iran, of ICE. Now, Ben said over the years she has regularly received IRS letters with interest and penalties adding up and met with the agency in 2009 related to her tax debt. She said she had small state refunds seized and some government rebates withheld. I think about around 1990, they took $800 from a bank account. Otherwise, I don't recall more bank account seizures. I never had money taken from a paycheck. Ben said she began withholding payment decades ago after becoming involved in anti-war activism, and that she sends the IRS a letter each year explaining why she is withholding payment. She said she is open with the IRS about not paying rather than trying to hide income. However, failing to pay federal income taxes is, you guessed it, illegal. Those who don't pay could still face penalties, interest, and collection actions, and in some cases, willful failure to pay taxes can be charged as a criminal offense. Separately, certain tax positions can trigger more severe penalties. The IRS warned in a 2022 brief that taxpayers relying on frivolous arguments to avoid taxes, such as claiming tax returns are voluntary or disputing what counts as income, among others, can face additional civil penalties and, in more serious cases, criminal prosecution, including felony charges tied to tax evasion or false filing. The agency cited multiple cases in which courts have ruled against tax protesters. It's unpredictable, Ben said. That's the hard part of this particular anti-war protest. You don't know what's going to happen or when. All right. So there you go. People are deciding not to pay their taxes. Tax resistance amid ICE protests and Iran war. All right. On that note, we're going to talk about the Iran war when we return. Stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
At Simmons Rockwell, you'll find brand new 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo X 4x4s for only $36,999 during the Declaration of Deals event going on now at Simmons Rockwell Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Bath.
When a child is fighting a critical illness, one truth touches us all. Every child deserves a childhood. A wish sparks a ripple of hope that transforms communities far and wide. And when we grant wishes together, we create a movement of kindness, strength, and unity. Yay! Become a wish maker today and be part of a journey that truly changes lives.
Fox 10 p.m. News is the first primetime local news for the Twin Tiers. Our reporters, Haley and Dante, scour the Southern Tier to bring you up-to-date news regarding local businesses, economics, and how national decisions impact our area. If you're not near a TV, don't worry. You can also catch our 10 p.m. news live on WYDCTV.com/livestream. Don't miss Big Fox 10 p.m. news on WYDC, on TV, or our website.
Happy Monday, everyone. It's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but it looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Now, Pope Leo has called the war in the Middle East a scandal to humanity. A scandal to the whole human family, said the Pope. We cannot remain silent in the face of the suffering of so many people The defenseless victims of these conflicts, what hurts them hurts the whole of humanity. I strongly renew my appeal for us to persevere, in prayer so the hostilities may cease and the way may finally be paved for peace. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that this is how the headline reads: The Quiet American, how Pope Leo is pushing back against Trump. War is back in vogue, so said Pope Leo to ambassadors from around the world in a marbled hall above the main entrance to St. Peter's Basilica in January. He didn't name names or have to. President Trump was flexing America's military might in Venezuela and the Caribbean, threatening to take over the Danish territory of Greenland, and assembling an armada for a looming war with Iran. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was grinding on. The way Pope Leo saw it, powers were seeking to impose dominion through arms and undermining the taboo since World War II on changing borders by force. This gravely threatens the rule of law, he said, which is foundational of all peaceful civil coexistence. His words were the latest salvo in a growing effort to insert himself in a world of spiraling conflicts. The 70-year-old Pope, born as Robert Prevost in Chicago and known for most of his life as Bob, has had a quiet start to his job as Pope. But with the world facing crisis after crisis, the first ever American Pope is stepping up his efforts at this defense of fading international order that the American president, among other leaders, is rapidly dismantling. The papacy has always been political, but now some of the biggest challenges to its vision of society are coming from the U.S., just as the 1.4 billion strong Catholic Church is led by an American for the first time in its 2,000-year history. That means his critics can't be dismissed by U.S. politicians as easily as a foreign pope's would be, says senior church officials. Complicating his task is the fact that millions of American Catholics voted for Trump. However, the conservative advocacy group Catholic Vote, which helped mobilize support for Trump, is now warning that widespread mistrust among Catholics over his hardline immigration tactic could cost the Republicans some of those gains. Leo doesn't want to be the anti-Trump Pope, senior Vatican officials say. Rather, the Pope is advocating positivity for a world that reflects Catholic teaching. But the contrast of style and substance between the world's two most prominent Americans, one a brash billionaire businessman who speaks in superlatives, and the other a former missionary who spent years helping the needy in Peru, is too glaring to miss, says the Wall Street Journal. They're offering very different images of America, but they're both authentic representations of who we are, said Elise Ann Allen, author of Pope Leo, a new biography. The cardinals who gathered in the Sistine Chapel last May elected Leo in the hope that he would restore tranquility to the global Catholic Church after turbulent years under the charismatic but at times polarizing Pope Francis, who unleashed bitter debates between progressives and conservative Catholics about doctrine, morality, and the direction of the Church. In Leo, they saw both clarity and a consensus builder. Okay. I think the cardinals were looking for three things, said Alistair Dutton, Secretary General of Caritas Internationalis, the Global Confederation of Catholic Humanitarian Organizations. They wanted continuity with Pope Francis. They wanted the unifying spirit of Pope Leo, but they also wanted a strong pope who could stand toe-to-toe with the big men of history of today, which includes the new American administration, but not only. Leo and Trump have yet to meet or speak with each other directly. A meeting might not happen for a while. Leo declined, at least for this year, an invitation to visit the U.S. that Vice President J.D. Vance gave him in Rome last May. Leo has already managed to tone down the tensions within the global Catholic Church by continuing to champion the poor and the marginalized. This goes on and on here. So your thoughts on this? They want the Pope to be kind of an aggressor to Trump. I mean, the media wants everybody to be an aggressor to Trump, but I just thought I would get your thoughts on that. You're quiet this morning. Everybody's quiet. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. We're going to talk about Iran, some of the things that we learned overnight. We also have, like I said, a couple of updates on New York State, and then some stories that we can't really segue, just a couple of different opinion pieces that maybe we'll have an opportunity to get to as well. But next, we're going to talk about Iran. some of the opinion pieces from over the weekend, what some people had to say. We also have a kind of an update on the Save America Act. Like I said, New York State issues. What else do we have? Some Democrat updates as everyone's eyeing who's going to be the nominee in 2028. A lot of names being thrown around. Well, we could talk about that as well. One quick thing that I want to remind you of. I mentioned this earlier when it first came to our attention, but don't forget, coming up on the 25th, this Wednesday, Chemung County chapter of SCOPE, which is Shooter's Committee on Political Education, is meeting at 187 Mountain View Drive in Pine City. Again, that is on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Their special guest speaker, someone we had on the program recently, Chemung County Executive Chris Moss. Now, you're undoubtedly familiar with SCOPE, but they donate to lawsuits to support the Second Amendment, rates politicians on Second Amendment actions in support of pro-Second Amendment legislation, educates our members, the general public, and the political office holders and candidates about the Second Amendment and constitutional issues, and donates to high school shooting sports. It is imperative that we support our youth so that they can gain valuable education and training. So the SCOPE meeting will be this Wednesday at 6:30 at 187 Mountain View Drive in Pine City at the Pine City Sportsman's Club with special guest Chris Moss. All right, stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
An albino baby buffalo was born.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized in a bus.
Day one of the National Glider Competition.
The only thing more American than apple pie and 4th of July is baseball. This year, WYDC is bringing you 25 New York Mets games free over the air this spring and summer. No fees and no subscription services. Tune into WJKP 48.2 to watch the New York Mets this MLB season. Let's go Mets!
You deserve primary care that connects. Care that helps you move forward. Care that connects you to world-class specialists. Care that connects you to providers who are part of your community. And care that connects you to the life you love. Because great healthcare comes from providers who care about connection just like you. Find your primary care appointment at centralishealth.org/schedule.
Tide isn't just a gentle ebb and flow. It's a mighty force of change. Just like the tide shapes our shorelines, we can shape our planet's future and protect the world's oceans from its biggest threats. Help us turn the tide. Join Oceania's wave of ocean advocates who are making a difference in the world.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. The U.S. Department of State has issued a worldwide security alert urging Americans across the globe to be wary of threats from Iran-linked groups. Quote, the Department of State advises Americans worldwide, and especially in the Middle East, to exercise increased caution. Americans abroad should follow the guidance and security alerts issued by the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate. Periodic airspace closures may cause travel disruptions. U.S. diplomatic facilities, including outside the Middle East, have been targeted. Groups supportive of Iran may target other U.S. interests overseas or locations associated with the United States and or Americans throughout the world. The alert comes after Iranian military spokesman General Shekarchi issued a chilling threat on Friday, warning that Tehran terrorists will now be targeting popular tourism havens as the U.S. and Israel continue their attacks against Iran. Tensions have escalated across the Middle East after the U.S. and Israel bombarded Iran on February 28th, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iran quickly hurled retaliatory rockets. We know all about this. A projectile struck the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad last Friday night, hitting a helipad on the sprawling compound that Iranian-backed militants have repeatedly targeted since the conflict in the Middle East began. Iran on Sunday also vowed to deploy a policy of zero restraint and hit energy infrastructure across the Persian Gulf. We'll get to that in just a moment. Trump sending out an ultimatum demanding an end to the Islamic Republic's hostility in the Strait of Hormuz, a key trade route that oversees the flow of 20% of the world's oil supply. The president set a 48-hour deadline for the deal, which ends around 8 p.m. today. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammed Kalibaf, said his country would make no such concessions, warning of a retaliatory strike that would ramp up already high energy costs across the world if Trump follows through with the blitz. Now, Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, after an assessment of the situation in Lebanon with top-ranking Israel Defense Forces staff on Sunday, said he and the prime minister have ordered the IDF to immediately destroy all the bridges over the Litani River to prevent the movement of Hezbollah terrorists and weapons to the south. On March 18th, the IDF destroyed 2 bridges over the Litani after destroying one on March 13th, reportedly the first targeting of Lebanese state-owned infrastructure since the start of hostilities. Katz also ordered the IDF to speed up the destruction of homes in southern Lebanese villages to eliminate terrorist infrastructure, following a similar model used by the Israeli army in Rafah and in the Gaza Strip. The IDF continues its ground maneuvers in Lebanon to eliminate Hezbollah terrorists and reach the anti-tank firing line in order to protect the settlements. On Sunday, Hezbollah hit a car with an anti-tank missile, killing 1 Israeli. Anti-tank guided missiles have an effective range of 2.5 to 5.5 kilometers or 1.5 to 3 miles. We're determined not to allow the pre-October 7th reality to return. We promise to protect the residents of the North, and that's exactly what we're doing. The IDF will continue to allow the evacuation of residents of southern Lebanon north to the Litani River from the war zone for their protection. The IDF ordered all Lebanese residents south of the Litani to move north on March 4th. An estimated 1 million Lebanese have been displaced today due to the fighting. Okay, we've got more on this, but I do have to take a short break. Getting ready to wrap up hour number 1. Stay with us.
I just love coming in after they've been here and seeing everything clean and tidy. It's such a good way to start the week.
Sometimes I wonder if they are magic.
I feel like it's the details that is everything. The being able to pick up on things that most people don't see or don't even think about.
House, business, or anything else, go with Magic Rags. The Enchanted Crew has you covered from ceiling to floor.
This was our last chance to show who our son was. I can't say enough about pre-planning. When you are in those moments, you are not thinking clearly.
We showed up for the remembrance, and we walked in and we just, wow.
It was arranged perfectly. Yeah. I certainly could not have done that in that moment. So to have those pre-conversations, it's really important.
Visit carpentersphillipsflint.com to learn more about our family-owned funeral homes.
Happy Monday, everyone. It's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but it looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming expected.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Some comments from viewers. Make TSA temporary ICE employees. Yes, that looks like that's kind of going to happen. Jack writes in, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Jack. It's a no-brainer for Musk to pay TSA. He knows once the shutdown situation is resolved, he will be paid back. It will be a win for Republicans because it will reveal to everyone that it's Democrats holding up the payments when the Democrats object to it. And now I saw, and it's so amazing. I thought J.D. Vance had a really good point on this. He said we've all seen the chaos unleashed by Democrats at airports across the country. It's preposterous that Chuck Schumer continues to hold TSA funding hostage Thankfully, ICE will bring sanity to our airports starting tomorrow, but it's far past time for Democrats to fund DHS. So Senator Schumer took to Twitter to respond. Untrained ICE agents lurking at our airports is asking for trouble, and it will make the chaos at our airports worse. Wow, they really hate ICE agents, don't they? Lurking? My goodness. Now, Iran has threatened zero restraint if the United States makes good on Trump's ultimatum to obliterate power plants. Iran remained defiant against the U.S. on Sunday following Trump's ultimatum, which demanded an end to the Islamic Republic's hostilities in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump gave a 48-hour deadline, which would end around 8 p.m. today. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Khalibaf, said this country would make no such concession, warning of a mass retaliatory attack that would ramp up energy costs across the world if Trump follows through. Immediately after the power plants and infrastructure in our country are targeted, the critical infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and oil facilities throughout the region will be considered legitimate targets and will be irreversibly destroyed, and the price of oil will remain high for a long time. Iran's foreign minister added that the response to such an attack from the U.S. would pale in comparison to its latest attacks on oil and gas facilities in the Middle East, saying, quote, "The only reason for restraint was respect for requested de-escalation. Zero restraint if our infrastructure are struck again." Iran's armed forces echoed the warning, saying that any attack on Tehran's power plants would result in the full closure of the Strait of Hormuz and attacks on energy and communications infrastructures linked to the U.S. The Islamic Republic claims that the Strait of Hormuz is not closed and that only ships belonging to enemy nations are being threatened. However, few oil tankers are passing through the strait as shipping companies, insurers, and crews hesitate to pilot tankers laden with 4 million barrels of crude oil throughout contested water. Iran's military said power plants of regional countries hosting U.S. bases will be legitimate targets for us. Iran has made good on its retaliatory attacks before with an Israeli attack on its gas facility last week, resulting in the bombardment of similar sites in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. The war, strikes on energy facilities, and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz have come together to cause the price of oil to skyrocket. Brent crude, the global benchmark, soared above $112 a barrel on Friday, with U.S. crude reaching $98 per barrel. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defended the president's stance on Sunday, saying that escalation could be the best way to de-escalate the conflict. With the national average cost of gasoline rising to $3.92 a gallon, Bessent argued that 50 days on temporary elevated prices are worth 50 years of peace in the Middle East. Despite the hypothetical, Bessent admitted that he did not know when gas prices would come back down as fears rise about prolonged costs from the war. "I don't know whether it's going to be 30 days. I don't know whether it's going to be 50 days. I don't know whether it's going to be 100 days, he told NBC. Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador of the United Nations, said Iran needed to take Trump's ultimatum seriously. The president is not messing around. He stands on his red lines, and he's not going to allow the genocidal regime to hold the world's energy supplies or economies hostage." We've got more on this when we return. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 moments away. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Month after month, year after year, even decades you've paid into the insurance system. You've done your part. But when you're seriously injured in a car accident or another tragedy, that system turns its back. Insurance companies care more about pumping up profits and stock prices than paying for your medical bills, your lost wages, or your recovery. At WYDC Injury Law, we fight to make them pay what's fair. If you've been hurt in New York or Pennsylvania, call 607-500-HURT. Don't let the insurance companies win.
Google reviews rank Ferrario Ram the highest customer experience Ram dealer in our area. Returning Stellantis lessee, lease a 2026 Ram 1500 Bighorn with Hurricane engine or Hemi V8, just $499 per month. $1999 due at signing. Only $499 a month, and it's yours. With America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Check out all your Ram favorites during Ram Truck Month.
If you don't see me, I can't save you any money.
Visit Ferrario Ram in Elmira now.
And we welcome you to hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akem. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep those waves, keep those comments coming in. U.S. forces have struck more than 8,000 Iranian military targets and destroyed 130 vessels, marking the largest elimination of a navy over a 3-week period since World War II. As Iran's combat capabilities decline and U.S. forces remained zeroed in on dismantling its ability to threaten shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, according to U.S. Central Command Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, providing his 4th operational update on Operation Epic Fury as the war entered its 22nd day. Cooper said the U.S. forces remain on plan to eliminate Iran's ability to project meaningful power outside its borders. Cooper detailed the scale of the campaign, stating, "So far we've struck over 8,000 military targets, including 130 Iranian vessels. U.S. military strikes have systematically dismantled key elements of Iran's military, including thousands of Iranian missiles, advanced attack drones, and all of Iran's navy, which they used to harass international shipping. Their navy is not sailing, their tactical fighters are not flying, and they've lost the ability to launch missiles and drones at the high rates seen at the beginning of the conflict. Our progress is obvious." The CENTCOM commander said U.S. forces have flown more than 8,000 combat sorties and continue to maintain air superiority over Iran, with air crews executing precision strikes while dramatically hunting threats and eliminating targets in real time. He also highlighted a recent milestone, noting that in just 2 days ago, U.S. forces conducted the longest field artillery strike in Army combat history, using precision-guided missiles to destroy Iranian military infrastructure, underscoring what he described as the U.S. military's unmatched reach and lethality. Cooper emphasized that the campaign is now zeroed in on dismantling Iran's decade-old threat to global commerce through the Strait of Hormuz. He pointed to strikes earlier this week in which U.S. forces dropped multiple 5,000-pound bombs on a hardened underground facility along Iran's coastline used to store anti-ship cruise missiles, mobile launchers, and related equipment, posing a direct threat to maritime traffic. We not only took out the facility, but also destroyed intelligence support sites and missile radar delays that were used to monitor ship movement. Iran's ability to threaten freedom of navigation in and around the Strait of Hormuz is degrading as a result, and we will not stop pursuing these targets. Cooper also underscored the role of allied coordination, saying the U.S. and its partners have built the most extensive air defense umbrella in the world over the Middle East right now. The update comes after President Trump said about that 48-hour ultimatum, saying, quote, "If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first." That's what Trump declared on Truth Social. More than 20 nations issued a joint statement Saturday condemning Iran's attack on civilian shipping and energy infrastructure and warning that interference with maritime traffic in the Strait threatens international peace and security. All right, over 20 nations have announced their readiness to help open the Strait of Hormuz. In a joint statement released on Saturday, the nations of Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Lithuania, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Republic of Korea, Romania, Slovenia, Sweden, United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom condemned in the strongest terms the recent attacks by Iran against unarmed civilian shipping vessels, its attacks on oil and gas infrastructure throughout the Gulf, and its move to shut down traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Saying, quote, "We express our deep concern about the escalating conflict. We call on Iran to cease immediately its threats, laying of mines, drone and missile attacks, and other attempts to block the strait to commercial shipping, and to comply with UN Security Council Resolution 2817. Freedom of navigation is a fundamental principle of international law, including under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The effects of Iran's actions will be felt by people in all parts of the world, especially the most vulnerable. We emphasize that such interference with international shipping and the disruption of global energy supply chains constitute a threat to international peace and security. In this regard, we call for an immediate comprehensive moratorium on attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations. We express our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the Strait. We welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning. While the United States and Israel have destroyed much of the Iranian Navy, including dozens of mine-laying vessels, most commercial ships continue to avoid the critical waterway out of concern for potential Iranian attacks from the coastline or potentially from mines previously laid by Tehran or its proxies. So 20 nations announcing their readiness to help open the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as I mentioned, Scott Bessent suggested that Trump may escalate to de-escalate the Iran war. He said, sometimes you have to escalate to de-escalate, he told Kristen Welker, on Meet the Press, when asked about the president's threat, which came hours after he claimed he was considering winding down the war in Iran. Bessent argued that winding down the war while ramping up strikes are not mutually exclusive. This is the only language that Iranians understand. The Trump administration officials signaled that the current focus of Operation Epic Fury, launched by Trump just over 3 weeks ago, is on taking out the Iranian military units that could prevent ships from sailing safely through the Strait of Hormuz. Quote, we have demolished the Iranian capabilities. Their air force is completely destroyed, Navy destroyed, and every day we are taking out their missiles, their missile systems, and the factories that build those missiles. And now Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Dan Kane and War Secretary Pete Hegseth are leading a campaign to destroy all the fortifications along the Strait of Hormuz. Dan Kane, an Elmira native. The Strait of Hormuz, responsible for a fifth of the world's oil exports, have been effectively closed by Tehran since Trump launched the joint U.S.-Israel attack on Iran on February 28th. All right. 50 days of temporary elevated prices. Prices will come off on the other side. For 50 years of not having an Iranian regime with a nuclear weapon, the American people, they are beginning to understand, thanks to President Trump, that there is no prosperity without security. If it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan or Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into. When it goes into China, it completely gets recycled. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. All right, Scott Bessent also calls out the terrible framing during the clash, with Kristen Welker. It's early Monday. Welker pressed Bessent on why the Treasury Department lifted sanctions on Iranian oil stored on tankers, which, according to Welker, will allow Iran to get more than $14 billion of oil revenue. Bessent rejected Welker's framing and said, Kristen, why don't we have good facts here? The Iranian oil was always going to be sold to the Chinese. It was going to be sold at a discount. So, which is better, Kristen? Which is better? If oil prices spike to $150 and they're getting 70% of that, or oil prices below $100? It's better to have them where they are now. And to be clear, we've always planned for this contingency. About 140 million barrels are on the water. In essence, we are jiu-jitsuing the Iranians. Let me talk, so Welker said, let me talk about the real world impact of it, because we're talking about 140 million barrels of Iranian oil, and that's just a little bit more than the world uses in one day. How much can we really change prices here? Bessent responded by saying, Kristen, terrible framing, terrible. He then went on to explain that roughly 20 million barrels per day come out of the Gulf, and that 5 million are repurposed by Saudi Arabia. 140 million barrels. About 20 million barrels a day come out of the Gulf. About 5 million have been repurposed by the Saudis, by the UAE. So we're at a 15 deficit. About 1.5 is Iranian oil that comes out. So we are between a $10 and a $14 million deficit on a daily basis. So if you think about 140 million barrels, that's between 10 days and 2 weeks of supply. And one of the reasons the prices in the U.S. of West Texas Intermediate are below $100, and we have not seen the massive spike as we did during the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine, is because we are well supplied in the market. Whether it's the Russian oil, whether it's the Iranian oil, or it's the largest SPR release in history done by a coalition of 32 countries, 400 million barrels. Walker accused the Trump administration of rewarding Russia by easing sanctions earlier this month, to which Bessent said she was missing the point. Again, Kristen, you're missing the point. Which is better? Does Russia get more money if oil goes to 150 and they get 70% of that? That's 105. Or if oil stays below $100. So they're getting less money. Our analysts show that the maximum extra amount the Russians could get would be $2 billion, which is 1 day of the Russians' Federation's budget. I don't know who does your research. You should get rid of them because they were getting it. It was going into China. China was buying over 90% of the Russian oil. All right, so there we go. Hakeem Jeffries, kind of disrespectful, if you will, to the President of the United States, saying he should keep his reckless mouth shut after the president called Democrats the greatest enemy in America. Quote, now with the death of Iran, the greatest enemy America has is the radical left, highly incompetent Democratic Party. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President DJT. CNN's Dana Bash asked Jeffries to react to that statement during the State of the Union. Jeffries said Donald Trump should keep his reckless mouth shut before he gets somebody killed. He also spoke to Bash about the war in Iran, which he described as a reckless war of choice. So reckless is the word of the day, I guess. They clearly didn't anticipate some of the things that have happened, including the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. What you're seeing right now, our gas prices are through the roof, and that's adding to an environment in America right now where life has already become too expensive for the American people because of failed policies by Donald Trump. Jeffries did not say whether he would support any more funding for the Pentagon or whether he would urge Democrats to vote no. Well, we'll have the leadership conversation when we actually have a piece of legislation that is in front of us. But I can tell you there's a strong opposition right now to the notion that this war of choice, this is reckless, it's costing the American people now more than $30 billion, should continue. We need to move, which we plan on doing in short order, a war powers resolution so we can bring this situation to a close. The American people want us to focus on making their life better and making the life more affordable, not getting involved in another endless war in the Middle East that is going to end in failure. The administration somehow found the resources, has found billions of dollars for bombs, but can't find any money to actually bring down the high cost of living here in the United States of America. So Donald Trump should, quote, keep his reckless mouth shut. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized in a bust.
Thousands lined the pier at Seneca Harbor. Race weekend brought thousands to Watkins Glen International.
Hundreds and horseheads joined other cities around the country on Saturday for the No Kings protest.
It's Chip in March at our Declaration of Deals event. Right now at Chilson Wilcox, save $10,000 on Ram 1500 during Truck Month. Choose for 25 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokees on the lot. Save $8,800. Or get 0% for 60 months or no payments for 90 days. Take advantage of loyalty and conquest offers, plus $2,000 in sell-down bonus cash. Declaration of Deals Championship in March event, now at Chilson Wilcox. Don't miss it. Hurry in today before the buzzer sounds.
MS is so uplifting. You see how the community rallies around us saying, we're going to fight this thing with you, no matter how long it takes or what it takes.
I love the energy at Walk MS. It is community, it is family. I can ride that high for the rest of the year.
A cure is on the line for me.
A cure is on the line for all of us.
Happy Monday, everyone. It's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but it looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. A couple comments from viewers. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Steve. The UK has admitted they have lost control of Europe without leaving to utter a single word. Their inability to condemn Iran is reflected by the fact of the immigration that they have allowed into their countries. Allowing no-go zones, Sharia law to be enforced, and Sharia courts to be formed, restricting citizens' right to speak out, about such atrocities, arresting opposing views and limiting speech? Why doesn't the rest of the world see them for what they are? Completely complicit. The UN and NATO also show there shouldn't be another American... Let me see this. There shouldn't be another American penny spent or sent to organizations that would rather have the United States no longer exist. Actions will always speak louder than words. Can't wait for the attacks to begin again on Elon Musk. People have lost any individual ability to use deductive reasoning. Our education system has done what it set out to do. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Chuck Schumer knows a lot about lurking. He's been lurking through Albany and D.C. for over 50 years. He isn't getting much sleep lately because he's heard that you have to get up pretty early in the morning to keep up with Trump. Another great move by Trump to put ice in the airports. I agree. Thank you very much. Stephen Collinson, the military expert at CNN, says Trump's new red line could set the Iran war on a fateful course. Erratic messaging on a war entering its fourth week is becoming a pattern. And I want to talk about everything that Trump said, but Trump has reached a moment when rhetorical confusion and contradictory threats cannot obscure the consequences of his choices. He may be about to test whether escalating the conflict can somehow point to a way out or will worsen the economic and political consequences he's already struggling to control. In the immediate term, the president has drawn a huge red line for himself with no sign that Iran will relent by his deadline on its threat to target ships transiting the Strait, its premier point of leverage in the conflict. If the president orders an attack on the plants, he is likely to trigger the most intense Iranian reprisal yet, which could pulverize global oil markets. If he fails to act and the strait remains closed, he will allow Iran's leaders to demonstrate they can defy U.S. and Israel military might despite being seriously outgunned. Attacking power plants might build fresh pressure on Iran's revolutionary armed forces, which controls much of the civilian infrastructure, but would also risk setting off a humanitarian crisis in a country already facing deep deprivation. Hospitals, water, and sanitation require reliable power. In a broader sense, Trump's new dilemma is fueling concern and criticism that he lacks a strategy or an endgame for a war that he launched without consulting Congress or selling the American people on its costs. Hakeem Jeffries said they have got no vision, no plan, no exit strategy. They clearly didn't anticipate some of the things that have happened, including the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Chris Christie was on ABC's This Week, and he said Donald Trump is playing checkers, not chess. Look, it continues to impact lines at airports. Yeah, as we get closer to this summer, when people are going to be going on vacation, it's going to have to come to a head. And when you have a 2.5-hour line in Atlanta, the busiest airport in the country, this is going to be a huge problem. But look, what everyone is saying around the table here is an indication that the president plays checkers, not chess. This is a guy who just looks at what jumps he can make today. Does it look like there's a double jump coming in the other direction? So you do what you do with Iran. Think about what happens with the Strait of Hormuz. You don't think that that's what's going to force you to do a deal with gas prices that Donald just talked about is to relieve sanctions on Russia and Iran, who we're going to war with? I mean, the American people see this stuff. And my point on this chart is that it goes to competence. It goes to, are you competent to run the government and make these decisions? And every time one decision is made, another domino falls. And the president and the people around him are not considering those things. So Chris Christie, failed presidential candidate, relatively unsuccessful governor, but loves getting the attention, loves being on the weekend shows. He says that Donald Trump is playing checkers, not chess. Now, Tom Tillis was on ABC's This Week. We know that he's not a big fan of Trump, so of course he's getting the attention of the big programs on the weekend. Jonathan Karl said, so let me ask you about Iran. How would you define right now, 3 weeks into this? What is the objective, the primary objective? Till said, I don't know, and I think it's a real problem. I think the president did a really good job with Venezuela talking about what the objective is. It was in and it was out. And I think they did a good job there with that, with extracting Maduro. There's still some argument about whether or not the regime is going to have a long-term commitment to the U.S. or going to realize what I think the president wants to achieve there long term. but I think that it's trending in the right direction. Here, I thought the initial bombing raid a while back was very successful. I could see why we needed to finish some of the work and go back in and maybe have a week or two back in there, really degrading their capabilities. Now it's ambiguous. I don't know what our long-term strategic goals are, but we're going to need to know that. I generally support what the president's doing in Iran, but if you're going to go get another close to $200 billion supplemental request, we got to get 60 votes, and we're going to have to figure out how to accomplish that. But $200 billion doesn't sound like 4 or 5 weeks, said Carl. Phil said, no, if you do the math, my guess right now, there were estimates of $1 billion to $1.5 billion a day spent. So let's assume at this point that about $30 billion has been spent sustaining the operation, paying personnel, supporting the kinetic strikes. We need to know how that money is going to be spent. And if it's going beyond a 60-day horizon, then we really do need to talk about the authorization for the use of military force and longer-term funding trails. So we'll look at the request here and see what's baked into it. And then we've got to work to get Democrats support. Do you think Democrats will be any Democrat support? Maybe Fetterman would probably be the only one. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, said Trump's administration is working to blunt rising oil prices by allowing Iranian crude already at sea to be sold, a move he described as turning Tehran's own strategy against it. Now they can go to places like India, Bangladesh, or elsewhere. The sanctions on the banks are still in place, so we do not anticipate Iran seeing any of that money. This is actually, as the secretary said, using their strategy against them. This is one more step to defeat that strategy on top of drill baby drill here at home, a waiver to the Jones Act, which allows ships to move between ports. We are going to defeat this strategy. It will be temporary on the part of Iran, and the end of the day, the United States and our global coalition will prevail. Now, Richard Porter, for Real Clear Politics, had an interesting point on this, and he said, is what initially looked like a flaw in the U.S.-Iran war plan instead a useful feature. Iran's most effective countermeasure against the high-tech U.S.-Israel assault on the Islamic Republic has been its relatively low-tech closing of the Strait of Hormuz, or so it seemed. About 20% of the oil consumed globally passes through the strait. 21 million barrels a day has been passing through this choke point in recent years. This means that shutting the strait gives Iran leverage to fight off the U.S. and Israel, right? Indeed, Iran's decision, or was it merely a reflex? Is there any leader left to make strategic decisions? To close the strait has been described as a setback or a blunder by the Trump administration. It has swiftly become conventional wisdom that the risk was overlooked, that allowing the strait to close is a failure. How did the U.S. and Israel overlook such an obvious risk? Why did they wait 10 days to sink Iran's mine-laying boats? But consider this. While the entire industrial world is impacted by Iran's closure of the strait, Iran's erstwhile ally China suffers the greatest direct impact. 45 to 50% of China's crude oil imports come through the strait, while Iran is giving passage to some ships bearing oil for China. The flow of oil to China through the strait is down about 75%, and China is jacking up its domestic regulated gasoline prices in response. Could it be that Trump administration planners figured that Iran would not cut off its own ally, and if it did, then it would effectively be signaling to China that its oil supply chain is protected by and vulnerable to the U.S. military, thereby enhancing Trump's leverage in his ongoing negotiations with China's President Xi Jinping? If Trump decides to seize Iran's oil facilities on Karg Island to squeeze what's left of Iran's leadership, the squeeze will be felt in Beijing, too. With that perspective, one can see why the U.S. plan focused on other priorities before securing the strait. The Islamic Republic had powerful incentives to leave it open. But if Iran closed the strait to hurt the U.S., Iran would also inadvertently advance Washington's strategic goal of building leverage over China. U.S. planners were also probably comfortable that so long as our objectives in the war are achieved first, the U.S. would be able to reopen the strait, albeit at the cost of a short-term indirect hit to the American economy from higher gas prices and further military action. Trump is at work eliminating international bad actors while ramping up pressure on China. A few years ago, China seemed to have significant advantages over the U.S. China had a chokehold on rare earth minerals and threatened the West's vital supply of semiconductor chips from Taiwan. As China increases Taiwan threats, our economic leverage did not appear compelling, and our military deterrence seemed uncertain and perhaps no longer credible. A year later, Trump has either eliminated or sidelined 3 of China's allies, Venezuela, Cuba, and Iran, seized control over China's supply chain for oil to counter their control of rare earths, and demonstrated the breathtaking skill of our military. So, without getting into all this, getting a little wonky here, this could be a foreign policy success in the making. And the only failure today is that of Trump's critics to see what he's accomplished so far. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We're running just a tad bit late. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
Hi, this is Tom Witzel, owner of Hesselson's in Amara Heights. At Hesselson's, we care about your well-being and overall health, whether it's relieving stress, muscle recovery, increasing circulation, or just revitalizing the body. Hesselson's now has 2 complete line of infrared and traditional rock saunas in our new and expanded showroom. Come in today and see why owning a sauna is the start of your new healthy lifestyle. Hesselson's is still locally and family-owned and operated in Amara Heights. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Can you help me?
Mom, Dad, we're going out.
Thank you.
Oh, look, they're playing chess.
What you got there?
Will you help my mom?
She's real sick, huh? Hey, crew, I'll give the first move to anyone who signs up to be an organ donor. How do you do it?
Easy. Just go to organdonor.gov.
You heard them, organdonor.gov.
More donors means more hope. Sign up at organdonor.gov.
An albino buffalo was born.
Nearly 500 kilos of cocaine has been seized in a bust.
Thousands lined the pier at Seneca Harbor. Race weekend brought thousands to Watkins Glen International.
Hundreds and horseheads joined other cities around the country on Saturday for the No Kings protest.
Day 1 of the National Glider Competition, severe flooding has caused major disruptions in parts of Steuben County.
Throughout the year, prison reform has become a priority around New York State.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. There's nothing wrong with questioning U.S. policy toward Iran, said Gordon Sondland. In fact, it is essential. The press should probe, Congress should challenge, and both parties should debate the wisdom of any potential military action. These are not trivial matters, and the stakes, American lives, regional stability, and nuclear proliferation are too high for anything less than serious scrutiny. What has become troubling, however, is how unserious the conversation has become around a single phrase, imminent threat. Following recent testimony by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, a number of lawmakers, particularly Democrats, expressed disbelief when she stated that whether a threat qualifies as an imminent threat is ultimately a determination made by the president. Some Republican voices, eager to distance themselves from the political risks of escalation, have echoed similar skepticism, suggesting that unless there is clear, near-term evidence of an attack, any preemptive posture is unjustified. Both sides are missing the point. The intelligence community's role is to assess capabilities, estimate timelines, and evaluate intent. It provides a range of probabilities and scenarios. It does not and should not make the final determination about when a threat becomes an imminent threat. That responsibility rests with the president, who must integrate intelligence with military readiness, alliance considerations, and the broader strategic landscape. The problem with the current debate is that an imminent threat is being treated as if it has a precise, universally accepted definition, and it does not. In a conventional setting, an imminent threat might be easy to identify. Troops massing at a border, missiles being fueled, orders being transmitted, but nuclear proliferation does not unfold that way. It is gradual and often deliberately ambiguous. A regime like Iran's advances in capabilities in stages, enriching uranium, refining weaponization, and expanding delivery systems without ever presenting a single definitive moment that clearly signals that the threshold has been crossed. If the standard for an imminent threat is that the Ayatollah must be on the verge of pressing a launch button, then the U.S. has already fortified its ability to prevent the outcome. At that stage, the options available are severely constrained, and the risks multiply dramatically. Since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the regime has consistently and openly defined itself in opposition to the United States and its allies. Death to America has been a slogan used in passing. It has been a defining feature of the regime's identity. A more realistic assessment recognizes that the convergence of capabilities and intent defines an imminent threat. And on the question of intent, there should be no confusion. As I mentioned, the death to America. This is not a regime whose intentions are unclear or evolving. Its posture has been telegraphed for more than 40 years. When the long-standing intent is paired with advanced capabilities, the nature of the threat changes. If Iran is within 1 or 2 years of developing a deliverable nuclear warhead and is simultaneously expanding its ballistic missile capabilities, that timeline cannot be dismissed as distant. In strategic terms, it is compressed. The closer those two tracks come to intersecting, the fewer viable options remain for preventing a nuclear-armed Iran. This is not a theoretical concern. It is a question of whether the United States and its allies retain the ability to influence the outcome at all. Some Democrat critics argue that without concrete evidence of the impending strike, the threshold for an imminent threat has not been met. Their concern, understandably, is that the broadening the definition risks justifying unnecessary conflict. That is a legitimate fear, and it deserves to be part of the discussion. At the same time, some Republican skeptics suggest that unless the intelligence community can point to a specific near-term trigger, restraint should be the default. This position, while framed as prudence, risks ignoring the culminative nature of this threat. Nuclear capability is not built overnight, and waiting for a final signal often means waiting until it's too late to act effectively. In both cases, the debate is being framed around a false binary. Either the threat is immediate and undeniable, or it is speculative and avoidable. Reality lies somewhere in between. Without going too much more into this, at the end of the day, the commander-in-chief is not deciding whether a definition has been met. The president is deciding whether the American people are at risk and whether waiting makes the risk worse. And in those moments, the decision ultimately rests on judgment and on the instincts of the president, including those times when the hairs on the back of his neck tell him what the data alone cannot. Now, Len Kordowski says that Iran's strategy is working. Trump's Iran strategy is working, and teaching our foes what deterrence means. President Trump didn't start this war. The Islamic Republic did on November 4th, 1979, when it invaded the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held 52 American hostages for 444 days. For nearly half a century, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism has killed and maimed more Americans than any other terrorist regime on earth. It even plotted twice to assassinate Trump himself. The regime's attacks against the U.S. and our allies are not a series of isolated incidents, but a single continuous war waged by the mullahs for 47 years. Trump's strategy is working. His legs are not wobbly and his commitment is unshaken. We don't want to leave early, do we? We don't want to come back every 2 years. Half measures against the regime have a 47-year track record of failure. History will vindicate Trump's resolve to end it. As Crown Prince Pahlavi, the leader of Iran's democratic opposition, put it, Donald Trump will be remembered as the leader who stood with the Iranian people when it mattered most, alongside history's greatest liberators. All right. By the way, and we've been talking about this a lot lately, kind of been a theme of the program. We'll talk about it when we come back. But the media is trying to represent, or trying to pretend to you, I guess, that MAGA is very upset about this, that Trump is losing support. Now, we saw the polls. That's just not the case. But David Marcus has a very good piece. When we return, we'll mention it. It's the MAGA civil war over Iran. It's a myth. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
New York State is putting nearly $60 $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. LeCom Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
Yeah, hello. I'm really not sure if this is what you all do, but I really don't have anywhere else to turn.
Hi. I don't even know why I'm calling right now. I'm sorry. My thoughts are going a mile a minute.
My kids are out of state. My buddies from the army are all gone now. I'm really alone.
I left the service last year. My mom just passed away a few months ago. I miss so much time with her. I keep getting calls about the bills, and I'm trying to get a job, but I feel so stuck.
Okay, ma'am. I'm glad you called.
Okay, sir. Let's stay on the line and walk through some things.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Happy Monday, everyone. And it's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have a more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but it looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming expected.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back and we've got some breaking news. President Trump announced this morning that the U.S. will not attack any part of Iran's power and energy infrastructure for 5 days after Washington and Tehran had engaged in what he said is a very good and productive talk over the weekend. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of those in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iran power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. The announcement caused oil prices to plummet ahead of trading hours, with Brent crude dropping from nearly $109 per barrel to below $94 per barrel before rebounding to above $97. The president had given Iran 48 hours to reopen the vital Strait of Hormuz. Okay, some comments. So that was just breaking, just happened. Some comments from viewers. Here's the thing. Trump has said many times the U.S. has energy independence. The U.S. has plenty of its own gas, far more than people realize. Yet the gas prices here have gone up because of the conflict on the other side of the world. Make it make sense. I'm just as confused as you. Comment from a different viewer. Hi, Frank. Well, hi. If Iran supplies 20% of oil, then how is it that the cost of gasoline has presently gone up well over 20%? The numbers don't add up, and I suspect greed is a mitigating factor. Thank you very much. Now, as we said, many people are trying to present this idea that MAGA is losing its support for Trump because of Iran. Well, David Marcus said, to read the mainstream news today or to dip into the, shall we say, eccentric world of alt-right social media, one would think that the war in Iran has created a major fissure within the MAGA movement. Both the polling and the word on the street put that lie to rest. Take a Washington Post headline from this week that blared, Vance is in a bind supporting a war that could cost him politically. Pretty stern stuff, except the very same day, a new poll from LMV showed that 83% of Republicans support the war, only 9% oppose. That same poll asked who GOP voters trusted more on the Iran conflict, President Trump or the podcasters Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, who've been leading the isolationist charge. This was even more decisive, 83% to 6% in favor of the president. Another poll from Politico focused directly on MAGA Republicans, the ones who we are given to understand are starting to revolt. The result was that 81% support the Iran strikes. Only 2%, presumably mostly podcasters, oppose them. It is easy to see why the liberals and legacy media and the relatively few anti-war conservative podcasters are licking their chops here. It does feel like Trump has broken a promise, and he can no longer claim to have started new wars. But Iraq, this is not. Let's all catch a breath. 3 weeks is not a forever war. If 6 months from now we are in an unpopular, boots-on-the-ground quagmire in Iran, such as George W. Bush found himself in 20 years ago, then things might change. But right now, every indication is that Republicans are lined up behind the president. In part, this is because, unlike in Iraq, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, who learned the lessons of that mess personally, has laid out 4 clear goals to this operation, all of them achievable in relatively short order. These are to deny Iran a nuclear capability, to deliberate what am I struggling with here? Debilitate Iran's long-range missile capabilities, to destroy Iran's navy, and disrupt its ability to fund proxy terror groups. Even though these goals have been repeated again and again by almost every official in the administration, the liberal media and alt-right podcasters simply refuse to hear them, insisting that the war has no clear goal. Further, gas was poured on the false flames of widespread MAGA discontent last week with the resignation of Joe Kent as director of the National Counterterrorism Center, where he worked for Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, who is famously anti-war. It was telling that no sooner had Kent resigned that he was making the rounds of the right-wing anti-war podcasts, and perhaps more telling that he was immediately included in the lineup for a Steve Bannon-backed anti-Israel Catholic conference in Washington, mostly made up of recent converts. The anti-Israel, pro-isolationist wing of MAGA isn't new. I saw all of these people from Kent to Bannon to the podcasters hanging out at CPAC parties 4 or 5 years ago. The point is that at least on this issue, they have little sway among actual MAGA voters. But, you ask, how can this be? All of these podcasts have millions and millions of clicks, but nobody actually knows what a click is or if they are coming in their hundreds of thousands from foreign information operation bot farms. Here's a question. If there are so many conservatives furious over the Iran conflict, where are they in real life? Why aren't they marching in the streets? Why aren't they filling convention halls? Why don't I meet them in diners? I posit, as do the polls, that that's because very few of them actually exist. My conversations with voters on the ground don't always match up with polling, but in this case, they do. MAGA voters, even those who are opposed to an attack prior to Operation Epic Fury, trust not only Trump's motives, but his ability to contain and end this conflict. As the great commentator Chuck D of Public Enemy once famously put it, don't believe the hype. The MAGA movement is squarely in Trump's corner on the Iran conflict, and Trump has plenty of runway to achieve his war goals, end the conflict, and prove his doubters yet again to be wrong. All right. We've got a couple other things on, well, let me see. Do I have time here? Miranda Devine said, as we enter the 4th week of the Iran war or excursion, here are the 2 great ideas about how to deal with some of the consequences, both from outside the Beltway. In fact, right here in New York. One idea, unusual, is from longtime President Trump critic and former swamp creature Richard Haass, now back in his hometown. The other is from Wall Street guru Larry Kudlow, Trump's great friend and former economic advisor. Both ideas are elegantly unconventional. In his Substack last week, Haass took a moment from trashing the president to suggest an alternative to boots on the ground for the prickly problem of opening the Strait of Hormuz, where tankers carrying 1/5 of the world's oil, you know all about that. Don't send the Marines in to seize Karg Island, Iran's principal export terminal. Just close the strait. Open for all or closed for all is the preferred option for Haass, a veteran Bush-era diplomat and former president of the Manhattan-based Council on Foreign Relations. That way, China and India will be incentivized to pressure Iran to get it open. Currently, apart from its ships, there are the only countries Iran is allowing to get any oil or gas through the strait, with Iran's biggest customer, China, getting the lion's share. Now, where was the other one? and we talked about the deadline being relieved, or being, excuse me, I got distracted. The deadline has been moved. The cleverest minds in Congress should put their heads together and generate a strong reconciliation package that will keep our military might and maintain proper voting laws. There will be spending offsets, waste, fraud, and abuse cutbacks, plenty of room for some entitlement reforms, perhaps even some supply-side pro-growth reforms. But the most important issue will be our national security, completing the mission in Iran and maintaining peace through strength. These left-field ideas from Kudlow and Haas might appeal to the president. After all, getting creative and intractable problems is Trump's specialty. Wow, we got a lot left to cover. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Allegiant's flight from Elmira to Myrtle Beach starts May 22nd, 2026. Whether it's a weekend escape or a week in the sun, Myrtle Beach is closer than ever. Non-stop to sun, sand, and seaside days. From takeoff to toes in the sand, your coastal getaway starts right here at Elmira Corning Regional. Mornings on the boardwalk, afternoons on the golf course, and evenings with oceanfront dining or a flight away with Allegiant's new direct flight. Starts May 22nd, 2026. Book now at AllegiantAir.com.
We are the keepers of the wild, America's original and most invested conservationists. For more than 80 years, we've been committed to conserving wildlife and the natural landscapes that define our nation. From rugged alpine ridgelines to peaceful tall grass prairies, we've supported the conservation of more than 36 million acres of American wildlands. Our funding has led to cleaner water, fresher air, and improved wildlife habitat. From abundant fish and waterfowl populations to robust deer and elk herds, nothing is more important than maintaining wild spaces for adventurers to explore and wildlife to thrive. We are America's hunters and target shooters, stewards of the American outdoors.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. Mark writes in, OPEC sets the oil prices, so all countries pay the price they set. But the price gouging going on is absolutely up to the companies doing it. Thank you very much, Mark. Rick writes in, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Rick. Trump on Mueller, I'm glad he's dead. Nice. Not that it bothers the Trumpsters. Netanyahu has no regard for leveling anything, specifically Lebanon. He is turning it into another Gaza, killing innocent residents and children. 1 million people, including 300,000 children, have been displaced already. It'll be another humanitarian crisis. All I can do is shake my head. That's Rick. Ken writes in, it's interesting that the Dems are screaming that the sky is falling because the conflict is pushing up the price of gas. Do you remember what Obama said about the rising gas prices during his term? He said, I wanted to see gas prices at about $5 a gallon, but I didn't necessarily want them to get there this quickly. Thank you, Ken. Trump ties the deal of reopening DHS to the passage of the Save America Act, saying, I don't think we should make any deal with the crazy country-destroying radical left Democrats unless and until they vote with Republicans to pass the Save America Act. It is far more important than anything else we are doing in the Senate, and that includes giving these same terrible people, the Democrats, who are to blame for this mess, a $5 billion cut in ICE funding, a deal which, even when disguised as something else, is unacceptable to me and the American people, unless it includes their approval of voter ID with picture. Citizenship to vote, no mail-in voting with exceptions, all paper ballots, no men in women's sports, and no transgender mutilization of our precious children. In other words, lump everything together as one and vote. With the House and Senate due to leave D.C. after this week for the Easter and Passover holidays, Trump implored Senate Republicans to override the 60-vote legislative filibuster and stay in Washington for Easter if necessary. So no deal should be made on DHS funding until the SAVE Act is passed. Now, as I had mentioned, I kept putting this off, but first of all, PBS fact-checked Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on the effects of the Save America Act, saying what they found was Schumer said the Save America Act would force Americans to register only in person, something only 5% of Americans do today. That bill, under consideration in the Senate, would require documentary proof of citizenship be presented in person to register to vote. However, Schumer significantly understated the percentage the percentage of people who register in person. Before the 2024 election, it was between 11% and 42%, depending on how many registrations stemmed from in-person visits to motor vehicle agencies, a data point that is not being collected. The statement is partially accurate but leaves out important details, so we rate it half true. Now, growing frustration with Chuck Schumer. People are talking about, in his own party, replacing him. Some Capitol Hill Democrats are discussing how to get the New York senator to step aside as minority leader amid concerns about his negotiating style and midterm strategy. Now, this has been an ongoing discussion. A lot of people were saying that he just doesn't have it in the age of Trump. Senator Chris Murphy was dining with progressive activists at a French restaurant in Washington's Georgetown neighborhood when his conversation about how to advance their legislative priorities turned to a thorny question: what to do with Chuck Schumer. To the surprise of some attendees, the Connecticut Democrat, a rising star in his party's left flank, responded that some lawmakers have been doing informal counts to see whether enough votes existed to remove the New York Democrat from his leadership position, according to people familiar with the mid-February dinner. Murphy explained that Schumer had enough backing to remain as leader, but the disclosure stood out nonetheless because it revealed that frustration inside the Senate has reached a high enough level that some Democrats were actively contemplating how to oust Schumer. Murphy is among a group of senators and top advisors who have grown increasingly dissatisfied with Schumer's leadership, according to people familiar with the conversation. That group includes Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who has been initiating conversations with other senators to gauge frustration with Schumer. Some of the people said Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota has also been active in discussions about her frustration with Schumer, and her advisors have spoken with other Senate staff about different scenarios to challenge Schumer's leadership. In an interview, Murphy said he is frequently asked about Senate leadership, but doesn't have a count of who would vote to remove Schumer and doesn't recall mentioning one. Could someone interfere from that someone was keeping a count? Maybe, but that's not what I meant. I meant that he has the support of the caucus. He said he still supports Schumer. We got to take a short break and wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Get your last second comments in, and we will be right back after this.
I just love coming in after they've been here and seeing everything clean and tidy. It's such a good way to start the week.
Sometimes I wonder if they are magic.
I feel like it's the details that is everything. The being able to pick up on things that most people don't see or don't even think about.
House, business, or anything else, go with Magic Rags. The Enchanted Crew has you covered from ceiling to floor.
Maybe it was a family vacation or a school field trip. But there you were, standing in awe at a national park. We are the National Park Foundation, and together with you, we're creating a future where every person, every generation, gets their chance at an unforgettable moment. Today, tomorrow, forever. Learn more at nationalparks.org/foundation.
Happy Monday, everyone. And it's a chilly start to the week today as we're tracking high temperatures only in the 30s. We do expect conditions to dry out as we do have more limited opportunities for precipitation ahead, though we are noting maybe a couple of snowflakes that could emerge, but looks like pretty light lake and hand snow behind a frontal boundary. But noticing how we do warm up substantially with our forecast tomorrow in the 40s, continued warming expected.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up today's edition. A couple of quick news stories. A new statue of Christopher Columbus went up on the White House grounds Sunday that was built using pieces from a monument to the Italian explorer that protesters destroyed 6 years ago. The 13-foot, 1-ton replica of a Columbus statue toppled in Baltimore in 2020, then dumped into the city's Inner Harbor, was commissioned by the Conference of Presidents of Major Italian-American Organizations and as part of the White House's celebration of America's 250th anniversary. The statue has been placed outside the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Artists retrieved shards of marble belonged to the wrecked statue from the harbor that were used in their recreation and reached out to the White House after officials in Baltimore refused to put the new monument up, according to the organization. Quote, Columbus statues have long stood as symbols of pride and cultural identity for more than 18 million Americans of Italian descent, said Basil Russo. For over a century, Columbus's legacy helped Italian immigrants navigate prejudice and hardship, serving as a source of unity and belonging as they built new lives in the country. We also learned over the weekend, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spent nearly $19,000 in campaign cash last year on a psychiatrist who specializes in controversial ketamine therapy. The socialist lawmaker hired Boston-based Dr. Brian Boyle, the chief psychiatric officer at Stella, a chain of mental health clinics focusing on novel therapies popular with Hollywood and Wall Street. Her campaign paid Boyle $11,550 in March of last year and another $2,800 in May and $4,375 in October for a total of $18,725. Comment from Mark before we wrap up. Trump cut oil going to Russia coming from Venezuela, and Trump cut oil going to China from Iran. So Trump knows what he is doing, hitting them where it hurts. Thank you, Mark. The New York Daily News wrote a piece, an op-ed. High energy. Hochul is right that the 2019 climate law needs a rewrite. No one wants the objectives to be entirely rolled back or for the state to step away from climate leadership, they said. What we should be seeking is a resolution that recognizes the significant shocks that have taken place since 2019 and puts us on a path to that leadership without imperiling other New Yorkers. All right, that does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everyone who joined us this morning. A lot of comments, a lot of waves. We do appreciate it. We had a bunch of other things that we just didn't get a chance to talk about this morning, but I'm glad that you joined us to have the conversation about all of it. Oh yeah, one last thing. New Yorkers, a new law. Letitia James is reminding residents that stores must accept cash payment. The new law goes into effect on March 21st. It will become illegal for any food store or retail business in the state to refuse payment in cash. Under the law, food stores and other retail establishments cannot require people to pay by credit card or use another cashless method to complete their purchase. Businesses also cannot charge consumers a higher price if they pay in cash. Stores that violate the new law will face maximum civil penalties of $1,000 for the first violation and $1,500 for each successful or succeeding violation. Attorney General James said New Yorkers have a right to service no matter how they choose to pay. Businesses cannot deny New Yorkers access to necessities like food and clothing by refusing to take cash or charging shoppers more for paying in cash. I will not hesitate to enforce this law to protect consumers across our state. All right, that does it. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson's hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Google reviews rank Ferrario Jeep the highest customer experience Jeep dealer in our area. Returning Stellantis lessee, lease a new Grand Cherokee Laredo X, just $329 per month. $19.99 due at signing, only $329 a month, and it's yours. Check out all your Jeep favorites during our declaration of deals.
If you don't see me, I can't save you any money.
Visit Ferrario Jeep in Elmira now during